Right, last few jobs. So we've got the indicators back on, the whole sort of rear light assembly, and I've got a new aluminium pressed number plate, black and silver number plate, because in the UK it used to be up to 73. You can have a black and silver number plate, but then sort of by accident really they changed it, and so now it's up to 1980 you can have a black and silver number plate, and then they sort of realised their mistake, as it were, and they changed the law again. And so now, because what happened was it sort of rolled on a year every year from 73, and then when it got to it's like it has to be 40 years old. And then when it got to 2020, I think they changed the law again. So it stops at 1980. So if you've got a bike that was registered before 1980, you can put a black and silver number plate on it legally. Of course, some people put them on illegally, but to be legal has to be before 1980. It used to be before 1973. Right, but that's all on, and it's just a bit fiddly, this whole backlight unit and stuff, but it looks really nice. It's all stainless steel bracketry and so on that they put on, and so we're good. And we've got I've checked, we've got working indicators and lights and so on. Then we've done the front end. Hurrah! So indicators are on and the headlights in, because we've had all these it was just these arms, and the same for the back. It was the arms that were just being re-chromed. But of course, everything revolves around them, really. So that's why it's all been a mess for ages. And I'm so glad that it's all, up and working. The only thing I'd say about fitting the front indicators in particular, and also the rear indicators, I don't know about you, but I have a pet hate for indicators that slowly sort of sag. It drives me mad. So what I sort of discovered a few years ago, the easiest thing to do is to fit all the indicators, but without the bulb without the bulb holder and the wire that goes with it. The wire goes down through this tube and then plugs in the headlight. So sort of basically take that out, or don't fit it. Then do all the indicators. Then you can tighten everything up really tight, and you can get to the nut that's under the bulb in here and do that up really tight. Then put the sort of feed the wire through and put the actual bulb in and the bulb holder. So after everything's tightened up, and so that works. Otherwise, there's always that thing where you get off the bike and the damn thing's drooped. It just drives me mad. I have to say that the Japanese came up with I've got the Kawasaki. They came up with a very simple solution of having an ellipse-shaped fittings. So they can't turn. It's pretty simple. Rather than circular, everything's ellipse shaped, so it simply can't turn if it wanted to. But the British didn't think of that. Right, jolly good. We're getting there. Just the last couple of things I've got to do. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to flush through the hydraulic front brake just to put some new fluid in it. I'm using DOT4. Sort of standard brake fluid, not DOT5, which I think is the silicon, is it, or synthetic brake fluid. So all we're going to do is I've filled the reservoir a bit, and I'm just going to pump the front brake because I've got the pads chocked, and then we can see, you can see the fluid just being pumped through there. And we've gone right down here. So I'm going to flush it through, make sure there's some new liquid in. Then at the end, I will simply hold the lever on, closed, and then tighten up the nipple before letting go of the lever, and we should be fine again. Okay, all done. We've got a nice firm lever. That's good. One thing to note is don't overfill the reservoir, because of course this strange sort of bucket or top hat sort of seal goes in and takes up most of the room in the reservoir. Why they have that, I don't know, but they do. And so you have to remember that's going to go in. Yeah, just bled the rear brake, which, as I thought, took an awful lot. You know, that's the amount of fluid I pumped through it to try and get the air out, because there's always a load of air in these systems, especially if it's in the caliper. I might even re-bleed it tomorrow, you know, leave it overnight when the air rises to the top of the caliper and just give it a final bleed. We'll see. But I'm pretty happy, but it just does take a lot of bleeding to get through. Yeah, just one thing, when you've finished bleeding brakes and that, it's always good just to get a damp cloth and just wipe everything down, those splashes of brake fluid, which obviously is highly corrosive. The advantage of brake fluid is that it is hygroscopic, which means that it's attracted to water and it sort of dissolves in water or something anyway. So rather than wiping it down with a dry cloth when you've done bleeding brakes, then just wipe things down with a damp cloth first. It just makes sure that there's no hidden bits of brake fluid anywhere, and then wipe it down with a dry cloth. It just means you're sure that you've got rid of all that brake fluid already. Right, getting ready to put the front wheel back in, and if you remember, I had a big problem getting this wheel spindle out, and so I've had a look at it, and one of the first things I realized was I put the spindle in, you know, cold like this, as it were, and this end of the spindle sort of pointed about there rather than there, and I realized that the legs were sort of twisted in relation to each other, and so I've slackened off the all the points where the mudguard connects to allow me, and so that allows the fork legs to just twist a bit, and so that's been probably the major factor in loosening it up. But then also I just put it in. It's still a bit tight, but it's nothing like as tight as it was. And so you know, a bit of WD-40. I worked it in and out a few times, and you know, I'm happy with it. So I think it's a combination of it being a repro spindle. I think it's a stainless steel spindle. You know, I had a trouble with the rear wheel spindle being repro and stainless, and the fact that the mudguard was clamped tight, and that was serving to sort of twist both the legs, and so they weren't like in line with each other. The height's exactly the same. I was worried that, so that there's nothing wrong with the actual fork legs. You know, they go in perfectly horizontal. It was more that they were twisted in relation to each other, and then this being a stainless spindle, you know, I think it's probably, you know, fractionally maybe a larger diameter than the original. Okay, so I'm happy with it now, and so we'll get the front wheel in. Okay, all ready for the wheel to go in now. So I've left the mudguard loose, and then I've just removed the brake caliper. So I think it's going to be easier to put the wheel in first and then mount the caliper. The only problem is getting to some of the nuts on this side, and certainly this top nut is difficult, but I still think it'll be easier doing it that way than trying to put the wheel in with the caliper on. And the order for the for putting the wheel on, spindle goes in that way, thin spindle on this side, thick spindle on the disc side, and then the nut on the end. So hopefully the wheel will just go straight in. Okay, front wheel's on, and all good. You can see it's just spinning nicely by itself. A couple of things. I found out that putting the front wheel in is best to fit the two spacers, especially the one where has it gone? This one on this side, this wider one. They need to go into the hub first and then put the wheel on. Okay, because you can't fit them once the wheel's like loosely in place. That's about it. And then a bit of jiggling, it's gone in. It was a nightmare putting this caliper back on, but I still think it was probably the easiest bet. It's just getting to this lock nut back here to do this bolt up, but we managed. And then of course do the pinch bolt back up on the spindle, and the next thing I'm going to do is go around and retighten up all the brackets on the mudguard, and then when the bike's finally off the ramp and so on and back actually on the ground, I'll then loosen the wheel spindle, pump the forks up and down a few times just to make sure everything's totally settled, and then tighten it back up again. Obviously I can't do that now. From the way the wheel's spinning, I think we're fine, but just to make sure that everything's in line, always just loosen everything slightly, pump the forks up, with a bike on the ground, and then tighten things up. It just makes sure that everything's settled and it's all okay. Yeah, good. Right, I'll just tighten up the mudguard and we're done.